Next lecturer, Professor Charles Burnett of the Warburg Institute, well-known figure in the history of astrology. Please, Professor.
Oh, thank you very much for such a short introduction. People might find this interesting. It's also on a slide, but I mean, you can distribute that because it's an interesting, I think it's an interesting bit of a Latin manuscript. I must say thank you very much to Lewis, not only for arranging this wonderful occasion, but also for giving me some particular information which I'm using in this talk, and to Dorian, who's also very helpful in providing information. My own talk, in fact, nicely follows from Dorian's, because it's also about interrogations, in fact, a specific interrogation, that concerning the thief. So it's an episode. I'm talking about an episode in the history of astrology, rather than giving any, far-ranging thoughts about astrological doctrine or practice. So I shall start. In the records of the Benedictine Monastery of St. Augustine's, Canterbury, we have one example of the use of black arts to solve a problem. I quote from Sophie Page's book about the Monastery of St. Augustine's, Canterbury. In 1373, 2 thefts took place in the monastery. First, money given by a layman to a monk for safekeeping was stolen, and later in the same year, 100 marks worth of gold and jewels went missing from the sacristy. After the first incident, all the monks were made to swear on the sacrosanct body of Christ that they had not committed the theft. When no one admitted responsibility, the black arts and other works, although forbidden, were employed many times to solve the mystery, which was never solved, in fact. It may not be coincidental that this is the sole use of the black arts, which in the eyes of the Church would very well have included astrology, is practiced. That we have, since if one looks at works on interrogations or questions and astrological judgments, which develop very much out of interrogations and indeed choices, elections, the subject of theft and the thief usually takes up more space than any other subject. I might even say does take up more space than any other subject, and involves many more details. I should add that detection of self-theft is also commonly found in works which we could call magic. The most ancient example is, of course, that of Dorotheus in the 5th book of his Carmen Astrologicum, or his Pentateuch, which includes a substantial chapter on theft, chapter 35, which is entitled, "If you want to know the matter of a theft that has been committed or something that has been stolen or lost, whether he will possess it again or not." The chapter deals with the following subjects: whether the stolen object will be found, whether he will possess the thing that he lost. I'm sorry to use the word he all the time, but it's masculine in the sources. Whether the nature of the place where the stolen things lie, how soon will the theft be detected and returned, the nature of the thing stolen, is the thief a stranger or somebody familiar to you, the form and color of the thief, the characteristics of the thief according to the planets, the same according to the signs of the zodiac, the age of the thief, the time of the theft, and finally, did the thief just happen to steal the objects? It was a mistake, you know. Dorotheus' work was not only a source for later Greek astrologers, as we've found out in Hephaestus, and draws on him heavily, but also through a translation into Middle Persian, Pahlavi, and subsequently into Arabic, and was drawn upon by several Arabic astrologers. Hence, similar accounts of the theft and the thief appear in Arabic astrological works, which were translated into Latin, mainly in the 12th century. Towards the middle of this century, the material of 9 of these astrological works was arranged in the form of a long doctrinal introduction and judgments, judicia, on every aspect of human life, arranged according to the 12 places: life, wealth, brothers, fathers, children. And we are all very familiar with these 12 places. The compendium was known as the Liber, novem, iudicum, the Book of the Nine Judges, and its final form was probably the responsibility of Hugo Sancteliensis, who is attested as a magister in Tarazona Cathedral in the mid-12th century, 1145 to be precise. We can see the 12 places arranged in this famous horoscope of the creation of the world, which acts as a frontispiece for a manuscript dedicated to Henry VIII, being the responsibility of William Burnett. Well, you all probably know this. How can I manage to point to it? But you can see the places arranged from the ascendant point on the left-hand side of the image, and going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seventh is opposite, of course, opposite the ascendant, and then progressing 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You don't need this explained, no. Okay. Yeah, but then you can't hear my voice. What I want to say is that the seventh house, being opposite the first, represents relationships with the client, person whose horoscope is being taken. Whether intimate marriage, i.e. marriage, or hostile, war, or in a legal dispute, or in acquiring things from other people, business affairs, or being deprived of things by other people, i.e. theft. It is indeed the most populated house, and the largest space within this house is taken up by theft. I don't know if you can, in the seventh house there are various things happening. I can see marriage, I can see someone with a sword, so that must be battle. I don't know, can anyone distinguish an image of theft in there? I mean, there's a house from which, or a church from which things might be stolen, but one might expect that there is theft there because it is so prominent in this house. You think so?
Yeah. This figure.
Oh.
He might be stealing the pork.
Oh, yes. Exactly. I had a rather blurry image before Louis replaced it by a very clear image, and there we can see theft. It is, the subject of the chapters of this chapter immediately recall those of Dorotheus, but with extra ones. And so I go through them quickly. Can one recover what has been stolen? That's in Dorotheus. When will it be returned? Also in Dorotheus. Is the thief a stranger or familiar to you? Dorotheus. Which member of your household has committed the theft? Was it your wife or your son or one of the servants and so on? That's not in Dorotheus. Is the thief male or female? Dorotheus. Is there one or more thief? How old is he? Dorotheus. Of what religion is he? What does he look like, Dorotheus? Where has he fled to? Will the thief be found? Where is he hiding? In which part of the house is he hiding? To whom has he entrusted what he has stolen? How many things have been stolen? Where are they? That's Dorotheus. And of what kind are they? Dorotheus. Chapters on these topics, often more than one for each topic, are taken from the works of Sachel and Bisher, Zahel, Al-Kindi, Jergis, Aristotle, Umar, whom I shall discuss in more detail, and Abu Ali al-Khayyat. It should be noted that Umar ibn al-Faruq Khan al-Tabari himself was responsible for translating Dorotheus from Middle Persian into Arabic. Since he was one of the astrologers who determined the date for the foundation of Baghdad in 762 AD, he must have translated Dorotheus at about that time in the late 8th century and would have been influenced by Dorotheus in his own work on judgments, which was known as the 138 chapters. We have it in Arabic and a Latin translation from which was used to excerpts were taken from this Latin translation for the Liber novem iudicum. These chapters obviously reflect a different society from that which Dorotheus himself belonged to. For example, in Umar's chapter on the religion and nation of the thief, de furis cuius legis sit et qua de qua patria, which begins, when a question is asked about the religion, the lex, and the nation of the thief, one should seek the judgment of the Lord of the hour. That's the Lord of the hour. The religions mentioned are those familiar in the Islamic world in the 8th and 9th centuries. The sun indicates change from one religion to another. Venus, the Arabic nation. Mercury, the Indian, the moon, the Persian, Saturn, Judaism, Mars, the Greek religion, or Zoroastrianism, etc. I mean, these were the religions which were known within the Arabic realm in the late 8th century. The most conspicuous addition in the Liber Novem Iudicum to the chapters of Dorotheus, however, is a group of chapters on the name of the thief. Here we are dealing exclusively with material from Umas of 138 chapters, divided into under the following headings: about knowing the name of the thief, about the number of letters in the name, about the letters of the planets, the longest of the planets of the chapters, about the letters which precede and those which follow, about the significance, the meaning of the name, about the order of the letters. What I would like to concentrate on today is the longest of these chapters, about the letters of the planets, and to show what happens when this chapter is translated into Latin by Hugo Sancteliensis in the mid-12th century. The chapter starts with the assignation of the letters of the Arabic alphabet to the planets, as we would expect from the title. We find a very rational scheme. There are 7 planets, plus 2 lunar modes, where the moon crosses the ecliptic rising or descending direction, and 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet. So therefore, 3 letters can be assigned to each planet and lunar node, leaving a remainder of 1. 27 divided by 9 makes 3, and 1 is left over. The Arabic alphabet takes 2 forms, one based on the place of articulation of the letters, called the hijja. They go from the ayn in the throat through to the back of the mouth, and finally end up with the tongue. The other stemming from the ancient Phoenician alphabet, from which the Greek and eventually Latin alphabets derive, which in Arabic is called the abjad, a word formed from the first 4 letters of this alphabet. The abjad symbols have both a phonetic and numerical value. Thus, the first 4 letters are the first 4 numbers. The 10th letter, Ya, becomes the first of the tens, and the 20th letter, Kaf, becomes the first of the hundreds. The last letter, the one remaining after 27, is the Ayin, which is the letter representing 1,000. And can I can go, yeah. Yes, we'll come back to that. Or let's go straight on to this. So at the very beginning of this chapter, we have these 3 letters assigned to each of the planets, starting, I don't know why, with Mars, but the first letter of the Arabic alphabet is the Aleph, which is equivalent to 1. The 10th letter is Ya, which is equivalent to 10. And the Q, the Kaf, is the 3rd letter assigned to Mars, and that's equivalent to 100. And we go through, you can see A, B, C, D, H, W, H, and so on. You can see that this is a very rational order, and it is in fact represented already in Arabic, in ancient Greek, and called the Puthmen, because the Greek letters also have numerical values, and when you arrange the Arabic the Greek letters in terms of units, tens, and hundreds, you call this the Puthmen for some reason, and this is all explained in great detail by Juan Acevedo in his book on alphanumerical numbers. One would expect then that these letters of the planets, referred to in the title, mean both letters and numerals, since each letter has this dual function. One manuscript actually spells out in the Arabic the number or the numbers of the letters, adad al-huruf. But the instructions which follow do not use this planet letter equivalent, but rather tell one to use the letters which spell out the name of the planet, or the sign, or the lunar mansion involved. So, for Mars, which is Mirrikh in Arabic, one uses the letters Mim, Ra, Ya, and Ha. You add up I'm quoting, the letters of all these individual items, whether it's a planet, whether the planet in the sign, or the planet in the lunar mansion, or both. And this sounds as if you're using the numerical equivalents of the letters, you add them. But it turns out that you're simply adding up all the mims, or all the ras, and the letters that occur most often will be in the thief's name. It's quite a simple practice. In the first calculation, you take the letters of the lunar mansion in which the planet, that is, Lord of the Ascendant, is placed, and those of all three signs of the zodiac that form a triplicity with this sign that the Lord is in, as well as the letters of the planet itself. You also take the letters of the moon and the lunar mansion in which it is placed. You add all these together, and the frequency of the letters, as I've said, determines which letters are in the thief's name, while the number of letters of the planet determines the number of letters in that name. So in Arabic, for example, the word for the planet Saturn is called Zuhal. The Zuhal consists of three letters, Zaha and La, Lam. And so the thief's name would also consist of three letters. One is also instructed to take the first or the last letter of the planet's name and significant letters within its name, while always making sure that the thief has the same number of letters as the planet of the relevant or of the relevant sign. There are three more. Then there are more random associations. If Venus is the indicator and it is in the ascendant, then the name is a Coptic name. But with Venus in a more exalted position, it will be named Ahmed or Muhammad after the prophet. If the indicator is Saturn, and Saturn is in the ascendant, then the name is the name of one of the black servants, or a Chinese name, one manuscript adds, or an Indian name, or an Ethiopian name. You can see how these are associated with blackness. And Saturn, of course, is associated with blackness and melancholy, black bile. And if its place on the circle is good, or it is in its exaltation, then the name is Musa, the Arabic for Moses, and if anything is diminished from it, then the name is Daoud, or Ismail, David, or Ismail. These all sound distinctly Jewish, of course. And Saturn is the planet which is associated with the Jews. Finally, if you find the indicator in its dejection, and it is in the 9th house, then the name is a name of one wrongly claiming prophecy and religion, without being so quite specific that. There is so much distinctly Arabic in this material, from the individual letters to the complete names, that one would expect a Latin reader not to make much sense of a literal translation. Hugo typically translates this text literally, but on some occasions actually makes some changes in order to make the text a little bit more understandable to his readership. For example, there is one manuscript which I've given you a copy of, but is also going to be shown here. There we are. Coming from Vienna CVP 2428, which was written already in the 12th century, maybe within the lifetime of Hugo Sancteliensis. And you will see immediately that in this manuscript, in fact, an Arabic writer, it's been shown that this writer must have been familiar with writing Arabic. Perhaps he was a Muslim or a Mozarab or the Arabic speaker himself, writer himself, has added in what was originally lacuna in the manuscript, has added the relevant Arabic letters and also provided the Latin equivalents to those Arabic letters. On a previous, I think following page, this same Arabic writer has interpreted a misspelt word for Syria, Samir, as Sham, which is the right Latin Arabic word for Syria, and he's written the Sham in Arabic letters in the margin. And we have various examples throughout this manuscript of Arabic letters being provided where they are relevant. So when it comes to the beginning of the Latin text, as I've said, he makes sure that the correspondence is close. Unfortunately, copying errors, either in the Latin or the Western Arabic script, the Maghrebi script, and the dots on dotted letters are frequently left out. I could explain this in detail, but... yes. And I'll just press there. Yes. I'll just say a couple of words. You can see already you have Aleph in 1 yard. No. No, it's not happening. Well, what happens? So you have Aleph, 10, and then the Kaf, and this is a typical Maghrebi way of writing Yah. And then you have Bet or Ba, and then you have Dal, and Ra, and then you have the third letter in the Arabic manuscript. And here there's a mistake already. Jim is correct, but if you take out the dot, it is a Ha, and so the Latin equivalent is not quite right, because the person who wrote that Latin equivalent didn't notice that we have a dot underneath this, but then you have the lamp, and then you have the... This is interesting, a sheen, which is interpreted either as an X, which can be pronounced sh, or an S, vel S. And we go on through the Dal is the fourth letter, of course, and then you have the Mim for the 30, and the Ta for 300. And then you have the Cauda, and then you have the Saturnus, Jupiter, Sol, and finally the Moon. And then the extra letter at the very end is the Gain. Again, you should have a dot on top of it, so there's a bit of a mistake there. And there's no Latin equivalent. And this is probably because the Rai, without the dot, just like this, was not pronounced. Evidently not pronounced. In Aragon, where Hugo Sanka did his Woodworking translation, and so there was no Latin equivalent. It was a lacking a phoneme which was lacking. The transliterations, as I've already hinted, probably follow the vernacular Aragonese pronunciation. I mean, this is something which we can go into in more detail. What does the transliteration of Arabic letters into Latin letters tell us about how Arabic was being pronounced in Aragon, in Saragossa, for example, in this period, and also how Latin letters were being pronounced. So it's significant, for example, or could be significant, that the Arabic Zar, the Arabic Zal, which is the same as Dar but with a dot on top, so it's pronounced these days, well, we're told to pronounce it as a DH, is transliterated as a Z. And the Tha, which we could say is the unvoiced equivalent of the Tha, is transliterated as a C. Now, having made inquiries, I discovered that C in Aragon was not in fact pronounced like a Th, as it is in Spanish nowadays, but would probably have more likely have been pronounced like Tsa. So Tsa is equivalent to the Arabic Tsa. But anyway, this is a little bit just off the track. The reader of the resultant Latin is unlikely to have realized that we have a numerical structure to the planet letter equivalents, especially since Latin letters are rarely used for numerals in the way that Arabic, Greek, and Hebrew letters are so used. The use of the letters of the Arabic names of the planets, lunar mansions, and zodiac signs is hardly appropriate in a Latin context, especially since the translator rarely transcribes the Arabic names. We have one instance of a lunar mansion, Na'im for the ostriches, and an isolated al-Mustari and Hutarid actually written out in Latin text, in Latin transcription, which illustrate that for Jupiter, al-Mustari, you use the last letter, the ya, the e, and for Hutarid, Utarid, the word for Mercury, you use the last letter, which is the da, the da. The very fact that Arabic letters are consonants plus long vowels are EU would also have been lost on the Latin reader. Less problematic would have been the random assignation of names to certain planetary configurations. A planet in a bicorporal sign would generate a word which consists of two syllables, two words, a name which consisted of two words. And in Arabic, we have Abdallah and Abdurrahman, as you can see on the screen here. And this is followed in the Latin, where you have exactly the same Abdallah and Abdurrahman, but it would have been more convenient, of course, if these words were written as two words making up a single name. In one case, Persians have been changed to Latins. That is probably explicable because of the varying meaning of Ajam, which means foreigner, which for Umar, writing in Baghdad, would have meant the Persians, but when it was used in Al-Andalus, would refer to the neighboring Latin or Romance speakers. The named signs can still indicate the number of letters. We see here the number of letters depend on the names of the signs. We have lists of the signs which indicate 3 letters, those which indicate 4 letters, and those which indicate 5 letters. I mean, this information can be used by a Latin reader, but they probably wouldn't realize that the basis of this letter count is the number of letters the Arabic words have. So Aries is Hamal, with obviously 3 letters, whereas Virgo is Sunbala, which obviously has 5 letters, but this reason for the number of letters would have been lost to the Latin reader without transliterations of the Arabic names. When Ali and Umar are mentioned as Mercury's names, because like Mercury, they start with the Ain, which, as they say, is not pronounced evidently in this period in Spain, the Arabic corrector of the Vienna manuscript has changed Ali vel Homar into Ali and Ahomar, and presumably to indicate Ali vel Homar. This is the Arabic corrector, one might say, the person who knows Arabic, Ahomar. And presumably because the whole point of the Arabic is to say that we have names which begin with the same vowel, the same consonant indeed, the ayn, but they are to be chosen depending on the region where the client comes from, or where the thief is likely to come from. In one case, Basra, in the other case, Kufa. It is helpful to be reminded that people in different parts of the world have different names for the same thing, and this is the final illustration of this. Here we have a bit of, one could say, linguistics, that the same word, Virgo, is Sunbula in Baghdad, while the people of Syria in the west say Astra, which is completely correct. And he gives another example. This probably wouldn't have been so, well, this could be applied in Latin to the different languages spoken in different parts of Europe, but these names probably would not have been familiar to the ordinary reader. While the Latin form of this text is not useful, in some ways in itself, it could have provided a model for an English adaptation for, and here I must thank Luis for his help here, William Lilly, in his Christian Astrology, published in 1647, includes, like the other astrologers we have mentioned, a large number of chapters on theft, covering pages 330 to 366, so 36 pages of his Christian Astrology, which for the most part cover the topics and the procedures found in Dorotheus and in the Liber, Novem, Iudicum. It is, however, with a chapter headed on the names of thieves, Thweves, or men, as astrologers write. He's attributing this to astrologers, not to himself. That he diverges, in this chapter, he diverges most from his Latin predecessors. The chapter opens with familiar words, i.e. those agreeing with chapters in the Liber, novem, iudicum, which start off saying, in the question of a thief, you must look at the seventh, the Lord of the seventh, which, as we know, is the house devoted to theft, and look at the relationship of this Lord to the Orient, or its conjunction with another planet. And from that follows various predictions. William Lilly, therefore, at the beginning of this chapter, writes, to know the names of the Lord of the seventh house, or the planet in the seventh house, or the planet joined with them, one must do as follows. And then he proceeds to give names, a table in 2 columns, one for men's names and the other for women's names, and for each column he gives combinations of planets. Then he explains this table in a little more detail. He says, some modern professors consider if the planet, who is the principal significator, there we go back to Almuten, of the party inquired of, whether he be angular or no, and then whether he be in aspect with any planet or planets. If he be in no aspect, then in whose dignities he is, and from hence they make their mixture. For example, let us admit Mercury to be the lord of the seventh house, important, and significator, somehow he's the dominus, or the almuten, of a maid's lover, someone who's in love with a young girl. And he, Mars, is in aspect, Mercury is in aspect or in the dignities of Mars. I shall then have recourse to the table, and there I find in the first line, over against Mercury and Mars, Matthew. We can see this here. They have Mercury, they have Mars, and they have the name Matthew. The names, as you can see, are all English names of men and women, which have completely replaced the Arabic names that we find in Hugo Sanctaliensis' translation of Umar. But the system is quite similar for the random names. If you have this particular combination, then you have this particular name. We are not told about the rationale of assigning these particular names to these particular conjunctions of the planets. But then he goes on to say, I shall then say the name is Matthew, or of a name equivalent in length, or of the same number of letters. So here he's picking up on the Arabic text in which you can, by various means, determine the number of letters in the name, which is equivalent to saying a name equivalent in length. One may note that Lilly attributes this to some modern philosophers and goes on to say that, I quote, "For my part, I never use this way, nor have much credit in it. Yet I believe, were it well practiced, we may find out a very, very pretty conclusions," pretty is a nice word, "and go near to find the very name, or somewhat near to it." So he doesn't discount this, but it is interesting that he should think of this as a kind of addition employed by some astrologers to the usual number of things asked, the usual number of chapters that we find in works of interrogations or judgments in the Arabic and the Latin tradition. And as I have hinted, it's only Umar that includes these extra chapters on the name, though now I realize that Palkas, or the Mysteries of Al-Bu Mazar, also has a chapter on the name of the thief, which I must consult. So it's evidently not central to astrological practice. Nevertheless, it has given rise, I believe, to an interesting chapter in Arabic and consequently Latin astrology, and must not be forgotten. Thank you very much.
sure that it is a secondary question, because, of course, for the church, it is problematic because the interrogations seems to be a kind of divination.
Yeah.
But if you ask David and yourself, the new Carmody, etc., you'll see that there is a lot of manuscript about interrogations.
Yes.
And also, on the other side, it's probably because some astrologers were specialized in interrogations, and particularly about interrogations on thieves that had some problem with justice, because they are a little bit like they are concurrent with the normal justice, with the ecclesiastical or laical justice, because they are able, or they pretend to be able to catch the thief and to resolve the problem. And for example, it's the case of Simon de Far at the end of the 15th century,
Yes.
who was clearly specialized on the interrogations of the seventh house. And he made a special manuscript in Paris during his process about it. So the problem is, I think it's quite important. In some way, some astrologers, not all, have a specialization who could be the ancestor of the private detective.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yes.
So,
yes.
they had problem with official jurisdictions.
Yeah. No, I'm not suggesting, I mean, it's obvious that investigations concerning the thief were very common, and both for astrologers and for those practicing different forms of divination or magic, you know. I'm just suggesting or asking why the specific investigation of the name doesn't seem to be so common.
But it can be adapted.
Well, that's what I'm trying to show, yes.
Lilly is very interesting.
Yes.
He translates in English a lot of medieval sources.
Yes. No,
adapted.
There may be some intermediate astrologers, but I was struck by the fact that, you know, what he says could well have been influenced by reading Umar's chapter on the name.
Just let me add a quick thing, is that Lilly has that famous case of the stolen fish. In which goods are stolen, and he does the interrogation, and then goes to a judge of law, in which he has astrological proof of who the thief is, and he engages the authorities. I don't think it includes a name, but it's...
Yes. One curious thing is that the chapters in various works, and certainly in the Liber novem iudicum, of looking for lost things and looking for stolen things get sort of entangled with each other. So at first you think, oh, where on earth is my watch or whatever, or my mobile phone? And you think, maybe somebody's stolen it.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. And it kind of made me wonder whether you have come across and researched if this type of technique or finding out names or times or the like has also been used for different questions versus like finding one's spouse or any other type of interrogations.
No, that's a very good point. In fact, there is another chapter in the Liber novem iudicum which asks about the name of the fugitive, I think it is, you know. So it is something that can be applied, of course, to finding out any name.
I also have a question because in the Liber novem iudicum, there is one author, a somewhat mysterious author, Geergis, whose identity hasn't been established so far, as I know. So I would like to ask about his possible identification, and also, as far as I remember, he also has a chapter that is that deals with this sort of letters and the theft. And in this chapter, I guess there is it's very interesting that the number of the letters is 20 some, and this is neither the Greek nor the Arabic alphabet.
You're referring precisely to what I missed out because of time. This shows the end of this chapter by Geergis that you're referring to. And what's curious is that in the printed version of the Liber novem iudicum, it looks as if Geergis is wanting to find out the name of the thief. But in the manuscripts, well, it's Vienna manuscript in particular, it's quite clear that he's wanting to find out the name of what has been stolen, which is a bit different. But as you say, there are various ways here, including the one at the end here, ut primi duo ternarii scenas alii solum quinas, ut subjectum es accipient. So the first two triplicities refer to 6 letters, 2 lots of 6 letters, and the other 2 triplicities only to 2 lots of 5 letters, and that brings us to 22 letters, which is too little for the Arabic alphabet. It is the same number for the Hebrew alphabet, I believe, so there might be some confusion here. But then what follows, this same annotator, who could have been Hugo Sankteliensis himself, of course, has given us an Arabic alphabet, which you would expect to explain what has gone before, but it doesn't at all. It's just an Arabic alphabet, which, as you can see from here, the letters of the Abjad alphabet start with on the right-hand side, and I've indicated them here in rubric, in red, and they go to the end of the line, and then they come back with kaf, lam, mim, in what we could call boustrophedon. They come back in reverse order to the beginning, and then there are a couple of letters over. And the only thing that this reminds me of is the signs of a tradition which is quite well known of assigning the signs of the zodiac to letters in Greek. And then appearing in Al-Kabisi, in fact, and Ibn Ezra, in which each sign of the zodiac is allotted a letter from the beginning of the alphabet and a letter from halfway through the alphabet. So the whole alphabet is contained, in this case, of course, in 24 letters, which still doesn't quite fill the Arabic number of letters, which is 28. So there are questions here, but it's interesting that we have this other transcription of Arabic letters, which is pretty accurate, but follows an order which is not explained in the text. Oh, and Geergis, well, I wrote an article showing that he's the same as Amitenyi. There's a text called Amitenyi, which is probably a transliteration of a Greek title, because it's got Tegni, it's got Techne at the end of it, but can't be identified in Greek. And he's referred to as in various different ways in Hermann of Corinthia, his Zemus or Egregius. He may have been a Greek, or he may have been a Syriac called Gregory, or a Syriac scholar, but certainly neither the Arabic original nor a Greek source has been found for this Geergis. Petra?
Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Charles, for this episode. It was great. All these analogies at work. It's wonderful to see. I have a question concerning the handout you sent on, but probably I missed the point. You said you think that somebody who knows writing Arabic did the Arabic letters in the manuscript? Or is it...
Well, yeah, I mean, Paul Kunich helped me a lot with this many years ago, and he said this must be these Arabic letters must have been written by an Arab in Al-Andalus because it's in Maghrebi script.
Oh,
But I mean, would you question that to say these could have been written by someone who is more familiar with writing Latin?
no, I'm just wondering if it's not somebody who just copies a template. Because
Well,
in some letters, let's say, for example, the noon,
yes.
it might have started on the left-hand side writing instead of the.
Oh, that's a
right-hand
good point.
Yeah.
You
So
might say, well, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
No.
Just curious.
What is quite clear is that the lettering, the writing, as far as the numbers are concerned, is from left to right rather than right to left, which you would
Yeah, but the letters in themselves
Yes.
seem to start.
Or even the letters. I'm not sure about that.
I'm not. Just to bring you
Yes,
some ideas
yes,
to
yes.
think about. And the other thing is a real question. You said something about the last letters of the planets used, but I did get the point for which purpose they were used. You said something that lamb for.
Well, the last letters will be somewhere in the name. It's all very
I see.
vague.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So
And whether you use the first letter or the last letter or some letters in between. For Zuchal, for example, they say use the Za and the Ha, two letters from Zuchal. So there are always two things to bear in mind. First of all, the number of letters, and then a significant letter which you find from by some other method.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.